In this lesson, we will examine the great age of European exploration that began in the late 1400s. First, we will see how the age of exploration resulted from advances in technology and a variety of motives, especially the search for spices from Asia. Next, we will look at how the Portuguese first opened a direct trade route to Asia by sailing around Africa. The Portuguese, Dutch, British, and French competed for control of trade in the Indian Ocean during the 1600s and 1700s. Finally, we will see how Europeans sought trade with China and Japan, but had only limited success during this period. Spurred by economic and other motives, the 15th and 16th centuries witnessed a great period of European expansion across the globe, referred to as the Age of Discovery or the Age of Exploration. The causes of this great age of exploration and conquest are often summed up in the phrase God, gold, and glory, which reflects the combination of religious, economic, and personal motives. New technological advances in sailing and navigation also played a critical role in this process. The most valued items in Europe were spices, which were used to preserve food, flavor meat, and make medicines and perfumes. The chief source of spices was the Moluccas, an island chain in present-day Indonesia, which Europeans at the time called the Spice Islands. Because demand for spices and other luxury goods was greater than the supply, merchants could charge high prices and make huge profits. In the 1400s, Arab and Italian merchants controlled most trade between Asia and Europe. Muslim traders brought prized goods to eastern Mediterranean ports, and then Italian traders carried them to European markets where they charged high prices. European merchants knew that it would be much more profitable to bypass the Italian merchants by gaining direct access to Asia. The desire to spread Christianity also fueled European exploration. Aside from leaving Europeans with a taste for spices, the Crusades left feelings of hostility between Christians and Muslims. Many Europeans even believed in a legendary figure named Prester John, who supposedly ruled a wealthy and powerful Christian kingdom somewhere in Africa. If he could be discovered, his vast resources could then be used to aid in the struggle against the Muslim world. Though Prester John did not actually exist, the tales of his power helped inspire some of the early voyages of exploration. European nations believed that they had a sacred duty not only to continue fighting Muslims, but also to convert non-Christians throughout the world. These feelings were only increased by the Protestant Reformation, which left Catholic nations in particular with a strong desire to find new converts to challenge the spread of Protestantism. In the 1400s, technological advances also promoted European exploration. The Chinese had used the compass for centuries, but the magnetic compass was adopted by Europeans in the 15th century. Navigators used it to find their bearings and chart courses. Astronomers had used astrolabes in ancient times, and Renaissance sailors found them useful for navigation. Navigators looked through the astrolabe at the sun or a star and determined its angle from the horizon. The angle helped them to determine their latitude as well as the local time. Eventually, the astrolabe was replaced by even more accurate instruments, such as the quadrant and sextant. The light, fast new ship known as the caravel was also developed in the 1400s. Unlike most heavy European ships, it was easily maneuvered along coasts and could travel long distances. The addition of a triangular or lateen sail also enabled the ship to effectively sail against the wind. The 1400s also saw the development of better maps. Navigators used portolan maps in conjunction with the magnetic compass. The lines on the portolan map radiated out from compass points, showing navigators how to find their way to key ports. The Mercator projection was created in 1569 by the Flemish mapmaker Gerardus Mercator. The Mercator projection is a special map that shows latitude and longitude as straight lines intersecting at right angles. The Mercator projection was much better for navigation because it was easy to plot distances, and it showed the true direction of places in relation to one another. The Mercator projection is still the most commonly used type of map for navigation. Prince Henry led the way in sponsoring exploration for Portugal, a small nation with few resources, located on the coast of Europe next to Spain. Nicknamed the Navigator, Prince Henry saw great promise in the exploration of Africa. The Portuguese could convert the Africans who practiced either Islam or tribal religions to Christianity. He also believed that in Africa he would find the sources of the riches the Muslim traders controlled. Finally, Prince Henry hoped to find an easier way to reach Asia, which meant going around Africa. The Portuguese felt that with their superior ships and technology, they could accomplish this feat. At Sagre in southern Portugal, Henry built a school where he gathered scientists, cartographers, sailors, and other experts. They redesigned ships, prepared maps, and trained captains and crews for long voyages. Henry's ships then slowly worked their way south to explore the western coast of Africa, probing for a passage that would take them to the riches of Asia. Henry died in 1460, but the foundations he laid enabled the Portuguese to continue their quest. In 1488, Bartholomew Diaz finally rounded the southern tip of Africa. Despite the turbulent seas around it, the tip became known as the Cape of Good Hope because it opened the way for a sea route to Asia. Low supplies and bad weather forced Diaz to return home, but in 1498, the Portuguese navigator Vasco da Gama successfully led 4 ships around the Cape of Good Hope and arrived at the great spice port of Calicut on the west coast of India. Da Gama returned home a hero. His voyage had finally opened a direct route to the riches of Asia. At the beginning of the Age of European Exploration, India was ruled by the powerful Mughal Empire, which had been established in 1526. Under the Mughals, India was the center of trade and valuable spices from Asia, and was the world leader in textile manufacturing. The Mughals achieved their height under the Emperor Akbar, who was famous for his encouragement of learning and his religious toleration. After Akbar, the empire declined due to weak leadership and religious conflict between Hindus and Muslims. This decline of Mughal power left India open to the advances of European powers, beginning with Portugal in the 1500s. The ruthless Portuguese commander Afonso de Albuquerque took advantage of the decline of the Mughal Empire in the 1500s to begin building an empire in India. Albuquerque and the Portuguese were determined to break the Muslim control of the Indian Ocean trade and turn the area into a Portuguese lake. In 1510, the Portuguese captured the important port city of Goa on India's west coast and made it their major military and commercial base. In 1511, a Portuguese fleet attacked the city of Malacca on the west coast of the Malay Peninsula and massacred the city's Muslim inhabitants. This victory gave the Portuguese control over the strategically important Strait of Malacca, a valuable waterway that gave them control of the Spice Islands. For most of the 1500s, Portugal dominated the spice trade between Europe and Asia. The success of the Portuguese was mainly due to their superior ships on which they mounted powerful cannon. Even with their technology, the Portuguese lacked the resources and military strength to hold on to the territory they had seized in India and the East Indies. Their harsh efforts to convert local people to Christianity also proved ineffective. Although the Portuguese attacked and defeated Muslims and destroyed Hindu temples, they had little success in winning converts. The Dutch were the first Europeans to challenge Portugal's dominance over the Indian Ocean trade. The Dutch homeland, known as the Netherlands, included a group of provinces and prosperous trading cities on the North Sea. In the 1500s, the Protestant northern provinces had broken away from Spanish rule and formed the Dutch Republic. The newly independent Netherlands took advantage of its strategic location, expertise in sailing, and wealth from trade and banking to compete for overseas influence. Dutch warships and naval vessels made the Netherlands a leader in global commerce. The Dutch set up colonies and outposts around the world, from South America to Africa to modern-day Indonesia. Their strategic settlement at Cape Town in South Africa was a vital link that connected their overseas colonies and trade routes. In 1602, a group of wealthy Dutch merchants formed the Dutch East India Company. From the beginning, this company had an unusual amount of power. Unlike the Portuguese and Spanish traders, whose expeditions were tightly controlled by their governments, the Dutch East India Company had full sovereign powers. It could build its own private army, wage war, negotiate treaties, and govern its territories. By the 1640s, The Dutch had driven the Portuguese out of Southeast Asia and taken control of the profitable spice trade. Like the Portuguese, the Dutch used military force to further their trading goals. Yet they forged closer ties with local rulers than the Portuguese had. Many Dutch merchants married Asian women. In the 1700s, however, the growing power of England and France contributed to the decline of the Dutch trading empire in the East. The Dutch lost control of South Africa and India to the English and French, but maintained their control over Indonesia, or the Dutch East Indies as it was known, until the 1900s. Like the Dutch, both the English and French established East India companies to control trade in Asia. The French and English companies forged alliances with local Indian leaders and princes, known as Rajas. Each company also created its own private army consisting of sepoys, or native Indian soldiers. By the mid-1700s, the English and French had become locked in a bitter struggle for global power. The fighting involved both nations' lands in Asia and the Americas. In India, Robert Clive, an officer of the British East India Company, used an army of British troops and sepoys to drive the French from their trading posts. At the Battle of Plassey in 1757, Clive crushed what remained of the Mughal Empire's military forces. The emperor was forced to surrender control over the province of Bengal in northeast India to the company. Throughout the late 1700s, the British East India Company used its base of power in Bengal to spread its influence and control throughout the rest of India. The company used diplomacy, alliances, and military force. By the 1800s, almost all of India was under British rule. Portuguese ships first reached China from their base in Malacca in 1514. To the Chinese, the Portuguese, like other foreigners, were barbarians. Europeans, by contrast, were fascinated by China and its ancient culture. European interest in China and other parts of East Asia continued to grow throughout the 1500s. China at this time was ruled by the Ming dynasty, which had seized power from its Mongol rulers in 1368. Firmly convinced of the superiority of their own culture, and able to produce most goods on their own, the Ming had little interest in Europe or the meager goods it had to offer. The Portuguese, however, wanted Chinese silks and porcelains, but had little to offer in exchange, since European textiles and metalwork were inferior to Chinese products. As a result, the Chinese demanded payments for their goods in gold and silver. The Ming eventually allowed the Portuguese to establish a trading post at the port city of Macau, near Canton, present-day Guangzhou. Later, they let Dutch, English, and other Europeans trade with Chinese merchants there. Foreigners could trade only at Canton under the close supervision of Chinese imperial officials. When each year's trading season ended, the Europeans were required to sail away. Portuguese missionaries arrived in China along with the traders. In later years, Jesuit missionaries from Spain, Italy, and Portugal arrived. Most Jesuits had a broad knowledge of many subjects, and the Chinese welcomed the chance to learn about Renaissance Europe from these scholars. The brilliant Jesuit priest Matteo Ricci made a particularly strong impression on the Chinese. Still, Ricci and other priests had little success in spreading their religious beliefs in China. They did, however, become important sources of information for Europeans who knew little about China. By the early 1600s, the aging Ming dynasty was decaying. Revolts erupted, and invaders from the north pushed through China's defenses. These invaders were the Manchus from the region of Manchuria to the northeast of China. This area had long been influenced by Chinese civilization. In 1644, victorious Manchu armies seized Beijing and made it their capital. The Manchus set up a new dynasty called the Qing. The Chinese economy expanded under the Qing. New crops from the Americas, such as potatoes and corn, had been introduced to China and led to a boost in farm output and a massive population boom. China's population rose from 140 million in 1740 to over 300 million by 1800. The silk, cotton, and porcelain industries expanded. Internal trade grew, as did the demand for Chinese goods from all over the world. China's booming economy attracted intense interest from Europeans, yet the Qing maintained the Ming policy of restricting foreign traders. Still, Europeans kept pressing to expand trade to cities other than Gongshao. In 1793, Lord Macartney arrived in China at the head of a British diplomatic mission. He brought samples of British-made goods to show the Chinese the advantages of trade with Britain. The Chinese, who still looked on these goods as rather crude products, thought they were gifts offered as tribute to the emperor. Further misunderstandings followed. Macartney insisted on an audience with the emperor, a powerful ruler named Qianlong. The Chinese told Macartney that if he appeared before the emperor, he would have to perform the traditional kowtow. In this ritual, a person showed their respect for the emperor by bowing and touching their head to the ground. Macartney refused to bow to any king other than his own, and in the process offended the Chinese by saying that the English people were superior to the Chinese. As a result, the negotiations ended in failure. Although Europeans could do little in the 1600s to force the Chinese to accept their demands for trade, in the long run the Qing dynasty's policy proved disastrous. In the 1800s, Europeans would return with superior technology and dominate China. Korea came under Chinese rule in the 1600s and pursued a policy of strict isolation from foreign contact. When European sailors were shipwrecked on Korean shores, they were imprisoned or killed. As a result, Korea became known in the West as the Hermit Kingdom. Unlike the Chinese and Koreans, the Japanese at first welcomed Westerners into their country. In 1543, the Portuguese were the first Europeans to reach Japan, followed in the 1550s and 1560s by the Spanish, Dutch, and English. Japan was valuable to Europeans because it provided access to the important trade routes in northern China and East Asia. Europeans arrived at a turbulent time when Japanese warlords known as daimyo were struggling for power. These warlords were served by the samurai, an elite class of warriors similar in many ways to European knights of the Middle Ages. The daimyo eagerly adopted Western firearms in their battles for control of Japan. In fact, the new weapons brought by Europeans may have helped the Tokugawa family defeat its rivals and become the rulers of Japan. The Tokugawa leader, Ieyasu, assumed the title of shogun or military dictator. The shogun held all the power and ruled in the name of the emperor, who served as a ceremonial figurehead. Ieyasu and his descendants would rule Japan until the late 1800s. Jesuits, such as the Spanish priest Francis Xavier, found the Japanese curious about Christianity. A growing number of Japanese adopted the new Western faith. The Japanese also welcomed the technology the Jesuits brought, especially the printing press. The Tokugawa shoguns, however, grew increasingly hostile toward foreigners. They began to see the new religion and its influence as a threat to traditional Japanese culture and values. The shoguns worried that Christianity was upsetting the traditional social order in Japan. In the 1630s, the Tokugawas turned against both Japanese Christians and foreign traders. All missionaries were expelled, and Japanese Christians were brutally persecuted, with many thousands killed. The Tokugawas barred all European merchants and forbade Japanese to travel abroad. To further their isolation, they outlawed the building of large ships, thereby ending foreign trade. In order to keep informed about world events, they permitted just 1 or 2 Dutch ships each year to trade at a small island in the harbor of the city of Nagasaki. Now that we have completed this lesson, examine the questions on this slide. After I finish speaking, pause the video and see if you can answer them based on what you have heard. Use this as a way to help you review for the assessments.